welcome back. There we go. Welcome back after lunch. Was it echo? Oh, maybe it's me. Is this better? Okay. Welcome back after lunch. I know there's still people, obviously a lot of them still eating, but unfortunately we need to move forward. I would like to now introduce, can I have the session title, please? We're going to talk about now self-care products and OTC, and I'd like to invite up Dr. Dunya Fadi. She's the Regulatory Affairs Head, Takeda, Egypt. Dr. Dunya Fadi is the regulatory head with 17 years of experience in pharmaceutical field. Dunya has a proven track record in regulatory strategic management, utilizing enterprise thinking and strong leadership skills, combining governmental and pharmaceutical companies' experience with strong pharmacovigilance and quality background. Dr. Dunya holds a bachelor's degree in pharmacy, and she is going to be moderating the session. Please, Dr. Dunya, join us.
Thank you, Madri. So, hello, everyone. There have been some changes in the session because we are a bit delayed, and one of our esteemed speakers had a flight to catch. So, we have switched the session. We will start now with the session number 6, how to strengthen the supply chain in Africa. To be honest, I'm very happy to be moderating this session today. It's a very hot topic, and I think it's very critical for all our markets. Our esteemed speakers today, we have 3 of them, and they will be navigating through this topic from different aspects and from different perspectives. They will be discussing the challenges that we are currently facing in our countries and how to, what could be the best approach to mitigate those challenges and what are the enablers to fight these challenges. Also, they will be discussing, shedding some lights around counterfeiting, parallel trading, and how these could have a massive impact on our markets. As well as also they will be discussing the opportunities and enablers to have to ensure delivering high-quality products, safe, high-quality products to our markets and minimize any supply impact or supply disrupt in our markets. Without any overdue, I would like to go directly to our first speaker today, Mr. Frank Shouty. So Mr. Frank, his presentation will be around counterfeit prevention. Mr. Shouty is the Sanofi Security Head for Consumer Health Care in Sanofi. His presentation will be around how strengthening our strategy to fight falsification and illicit trafficking. Please join me to welcome, he will be joining us virtually. Please join me to welcome Mr. Frank. Mr. Frank, please, are you with us?
Hey, hello everybody, do you read me?
The floor is all yours.
Yeah, do you read me?
Yes, perfectly, we can hear you very well.
Yeah, hello everybody, salam alaikum. Thank you for inviting me in this summit. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit playing in between the time for going to the airport. That's why I speed up a little bit the way to go back to work. I'm going to introduce myself very quickly. I'm Frank. I'm working for Sanofi as a security head for consumer healthcare. And before I was working for a Sanofi counterfeiting operation in Africa and Middle East. So I've got some knowledge, not everything, but I've got some knowledge about that. How do we strengthen our strategy to fight falsification?
Can you make it full screen, presentation mode?
Oh yeah, you're right. Yep. So how do we strengthen our strategy to fight falsification and illicit trafficking. I will introduce the 4 points of my contents, the new challenge we face, how we act, our roadmap, and some basics on the counterfeited products detection. We face a real big challenge now, specifically due to the e-commerce. E-commerce has become a real main threat to our sectors, with illegal pharmacies and proliferating all around the world, specifically in Egypt, specifically in Northern Africa. And so we face a real problem with counterfeited and diversified products. To give you some perspective, we estimate that around $4.4 billion are the total value of fake medicine worldwide. And you could see in these pictures that Egypt, Algeria are not the lowest, far from that. We face illicit trade, theft, and falsification. So, of course, the US is the big. Why? Because the market of US is the big one, and of course the Chinese one also. But you can see that we have in Africa a real problem of diversification and also falsification of products. Just to give you an idea, if we think about e-commerce, we estimate that 460 million of prescriptions dispensed by illegal online pharmacies in the 5 last years. So you could imagine the volume of the products that have been sold. And if we just focus on the US, because we have done some survey about that, 35,000 online pharmacies. From that, 95% are illicit. It's huge. 42% of Americans buy prescription medication online. And what they do now, it's what is going tomorrow for all of us, everywhere. 7 of the 10 Americans believe legitimate online pharmacies appear first in search results. And 45% of Americans erroneously believe all websites offering prescription medicine have been approved by FDA. So it's quite a problem. And we are really working on that now and developing some web monitoring strategies in order to try to regulate that, specifically with dialogues with Amazon, eBay, and other e-commerce platforms. We're working hard on that, and it's just the beginning due to what we face and what you see in the screen. The falsification and diversion of our products in 2022, we can say that Asia is the first market, Africa, Latin America is the second one, but Africa and Middle East is the number 3. So the falsified products are different from the diversified. The diversified products are reverse products, which are genuine products that are sold in countries where there is no authorization of sale. So it's for us, diversion is also an illicit trade, even if the product is genuine. Falsified is falsified. So on the top 5 origin of diversion, number 1 is Turkey, 2 Mexico, Central America, of course, some part in France, and Egypt, number 5, Egypt, where you are. And top 5 of the destination, number 1, US, because it's the biggest market for pharmacies, but also Pakistan, Iraq, and you could see Egypt, number 5. So Egypt is a big market for diversion and for the destination of those products. How we act in Sanofi? We are driving by those three mottos. We try to protect and and business secure. So we secure our top priority products and our core products, meaning that we have selected the product that should be prioritized for protection. We can't launch a policy of securing everything. So we have made some prioritization. Then we have the patient and health protection. So we proactively detect, investigate, respond. That's a big work, and it's a big mission. And then, of course, we try to regulation, awareness of the dangers, and we try to do that, of course, by through different ways, mainly regulatory and legal side. So this is the three, I would say, the three way of doing. So protecting the business and the products, protecting the patient and the health, and trying to strengthen the regulation and the laws locally. To do that, we have done a multifunctional centralized organization within Sanofi. How does it work? It works with a real coordination team, meaning that global security is not alone. We work with pharmacovigilance. We work with legal. We work on a daily matter with regulatory affairs. We work with legal. We work with quality. And everybody is involved in a coordination team where we work on each case. We work on each prioritization. We work on each solution to strengthen the supply chain, for example. So the efficiency is key. So it helps us focus on growth by concentrating our efforts on key products and key markets, contribute to implementing innovative new solutions such as packaging protection. It's a big also mission. Accelerate efficiency by cross-function decision makers, what we do through this coordination team, and enable us to reinvent how we work through the unique global and local model, meaning that we are focusing a lot on web monitoring. So how do we work that on a day-to-day way? We first detect, then we analyze, and to do that, we have our own lab, central lab, Sanofi, able to analyze the chemical solution, but also the packaging, the batch number, everything. So with this internal capacity, we are able to say legally, this product is fake, it has been falsified, and we can go with this assessment to the court. And so we can provide that to the legal side, and we could act and investigate more. So we also alert the health authorities. So we try to have a dialogue with every health authorities in the world. We maintain some investigations. Some investigation we are succeeding to the stop of some illegal trade, or even in China we succeed to close some plants, illegal plants. We work, of course, with the legal side, and we go to the court in order to have some decision. The crucial role of our lab is really important. I won't go too far with that, but it's really very important. We are inspecting packaging for sign of falsification, product lot number, batch number, inspecting variables such as color, printing. The lab works closely with all the teams and is centralizing all information about that. So we have a real database, and the first database investigation are now 20 years old. So we've got a lot of data regarding our products and where we found them falsified. Our roadmap. So we've got 4 actions. We would like to protect the pipeline committee, support product patrimony, industrial product production, supply chain security. So the first one is protect the pipeline committee. So the objective are to ensure the products in the pipeline remain unavailable to the outside world, and make sure samples have not been stolen from labs and no falsified version of the product are in circulation. So we do that with audits in our plants It's a very regular way to do it, and it works. So we prevent any unintentional and unintentional data loss. So we do e-commerce platform, including dark web, pharmaceutical events, custom seizure. Support product patrimony. The objective are to safeguarding our company most important assets. So we monitor the internet closely, very closely, in order to see if we've got some data going out. Action 3, industrial production. The idea is to first to prevent the distribution of falsified products. So through the packaging, including 3 complementary levels of production, we are able to secure our production. So it works through technologies that provide evidence of tampering, so tape, glue, seal, of course, but also through what we call an ESSL. So every box is under a camera, and we can detect and see if the box is our or not our, with a simple app that we've got on the phone. So, and we do some packaging identification through a data matrix similar to a QR code. So it takes time, but time after time we set up that in our prioritized product. Supply chain security. We proactively reduce risk and disruption to the legitimate supply chain. How does it work? Mainly, it's based on risk assessment, management, and application of best practice. We need to identify where risk exists across the company. So it's also a permanent mission that we do in warehouse, shipment, transportation, schedule. It's a real work for some of part of the team. Then we've got the action in pillar 2. So the target web monitoring. So we really focus on that. We have some providers, and we extend this capacity to today in order to have tomorrow a capacity to detect any suspicious sale in big platform like Amazon. There is not only Amazon, but like Amazon. So it needs to do sometimes some test sample to see that if it's a real one. But we are increasing our capacity in that. It's a real mandatory mission for it. And of course, the legal response. We have some automized takedown capacity now through e-commerce and web monitoring platforms, and we have also a team dedicated to that in order to quickly be able to have a legal response to that. To make it very, I've got only 2 minutes just to give you the last point for the product detection. I will go this way. There is no way to have a product that is not coming from Europe or from Sanofi. So it goes from factories to distribution center, then to agents that are distributing that in Africa, to central distributors or to local distributors. The packaging today are almost undetectable. So I will say that there is a very, very much difficulty to detect some packages now. The only way is what? There is no retail products. There is no box empty. There is no pills without box from us. There is no official language in Chinese for an African market. There is no Turkish language for Egyptian market. So there is simple things to be sure is that the packaging is full, and if the package is not full, it's not our product. Very simple one. So what you should check is the logo, the packaging, the blisters, the quality, the batch number, and the notice. The notice are very important. In Brazil, we detect a big diversification line through notice that we are not in Portuguese but in Spanish. So this is very important to make it. I have been very quick because I had only 15 minutes, Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frank, for your insightful presentation, sharing with us Sanofi effort actually for the product and business security, as well as the measures and the plans you have taken to secure your products. I think now we need to move to our next speaker without any overdue to Dr. Winnie Nganga and her presentation about the parallel importation. Dr. Winnie is the chairperson of Kenya Trade Association, KAPI, Kenya Association for Pharmaceutical Industry. As well, she's currently working in JSK as the regulatory director responsible for 26 markets in Africa. She's a pharmacist, holds master degrees in health economics and pharmacoeconomics. She is with more than 10 years of experience in regulatory science, government affairs, global health and market access. Dr. Winnie is also council member of the Africa Engagement Committee, and she is an advisory board member of Women in Global Health. Please, in her presentation also, Dr. Winnie will be taking us through the regulatory challenges and enablers in the supply chain, as well as digitalization and sustainability in the supply chain. Please join me to welcome Dr. Winnie to the stage. Dr. Winnie, please.
Thank you, Donia. So immediately after lunch, I hope we are all active and listening. Yeah, happy to be here. Yes, so as Donia said, Dr. Winnie Nganga, I'm the chair of the association called Kenya Association of Pharmaceutical Industry, that is KAPI, based in Kenya, and we handle the East Africa industry voice, basically for East Africa. Just a quick introduction on who the association is. We have member manufacturers who are our members who are involved in research, innovation, and development. We deal with companies that work on biopharmaceuticals, vaccines, medical devices, and diagnostics. We are the industry voice in promoting efficiency in the pharmaceutical industry for an improved access of quality, safe, and efficacious medicines. As we know, the private sector basically handles over 40% of the provision of commodities within the East Africa landscape. Just to mention what our vision and mission is, it is to be leading in the provision of innovative, world-class quality healthcare solutions. Our mission is to promote an ethical, innovative, and responsible healthcare industry, and our core values involve ethics, integrity, excellence, and relationships. Our current members, as I mentioned, they're mostly the multinationals. I think you can see some of the logos from your companies. And these are companies that are based in Kenya, working across for the East Africa market. So just briefly, that is who KAPI is. And to the matter of the question today is to talk about supply chain integrity, supply chain opportunities, supply chain challenges, and also look at the parallel importation as an opportunity, and also what challenges we would be facing as an industry. So this is the industry feedback on supply chain strengthening. So basically it's talking about how we should be embracing an end-to-end supply chain system, how the areas around supply chain integrity, what are the problems, what are the challenges. Also looking at regulatory enabling environment. Today we are here because of the regulatory space. So I'll focus a lot more on the regulatory challenges and the opportunities there are. Also looking at the supply chain security toolkits, sustainability and digital health as a system and a solution to managing supply chain more efficiently. So when we talk about supply chain integrity, it is what my previous colleague has talked about. It's talking about the diverted products, the counterfeit and substandard products. It's about unregulated products that are coming into the market under the disguise of a parallel importation. and how they are regulated. So, and what it is that they result in. So it's basically talking about the challenge whereby products that are coming, as even the previous speaker has talked about, packs that are coming in foreign language. If it's a Kenya pack, it's supposed to be in English. So this pack must have, if it's a Turkey pack, it means it's a diverted product. So how are we handling this as an industry to ensure that the patient who is the one who receives the product is actually getting the right product and that it has come through a verified channel and a verified routes. So it's looking at the supply chain in its entirety and what it means to the patient. There's a lot of opportunity coming out from parallel importation whereby similar products that have been manufactured by the manufacturer is coming into a market in a manner that is not fully regulated. So that is one of the areas that we want to look into in terms of supply chain integrity. And the risk that it poses to the patient is basically the patient is supplied with a product that has the incorrect labeling statements. It could be having different storage conditions, different shelf life. It could also be having a foreign language that the patient cannot read if it's the patient leaflet that is there. So when we're also looking at that, we're looking at the prescriber information. What is also lying there in that product? Does it have the right prescribing information for the prescriber to be able to use this? Another way of looking at it is the unverified and unvalidated supply routes that are compromising the safety, quality, and efficacy of these products. This is through in very big quotes, what we are calling parallel importation that is coming in unregulated or uncontrolled and not well regulated by, within the sector. So what this also leads to is the opportunity for substandard and falsified products. When we're looking at the regulatory compliance risk of ensure if there is unregulated supply chain, is that the products supplied are not compliant with the registered details. And this now involves the diverted and the cargo theft. When we're looking at the business opportunity or the business impact, you're posing a risk when products are mishandled or brought in through a different channel that is not authorized in the right manner. There's also loss of sales because you're not sure whether it has now been, it's coming directly from the mother company. When you're also looking at unregistered packs, it's leading to a lot of confusion whereby you have some packs that are even in English, others are in foreign language, and you're not sure. The market in itself gets confused, and that in itself means that whoever is bringing the product, if they're not a verified source, they're probably not considering the PV aspect or taking up the responsibility of PV. So what are the, in terms of regulation challenges in supply chain? We have divergent guidelines across regions and across countries. I think our speaker, one of the speakers talked about the labeling differences across even the Arabian countries. Similarly, that's the same thing happening across even East Africa and all the other regions whereby there's difference in terms of labeling requirements. That means there's a difference in terms of the packaging, and that means there are challenges of supply because you have to meet that specific criteria for each and every market, and that results in, even in terms of being able to supply, there's a lot of complexity. There is also the minimum quantity orders, whereby you've been requested that for a region you must meet this minimum order quantity, but because your pack is unique or your labeling requirements are unique for your market, then you're unable to meet the minimum order quantity, and this also affects the access of the product. We're also looking at product-specific monograph adherence, whereby every country or every regulator is requesting for difference in terms of that, and that means there's the uniqueness or complexity just increases. We're also looking at the post-approval changes, implementation, the fragmentation. There are different levels in terms of when a product is approved. You might submit this product, the change or variation in a certain market that is also sharing this. Let's say you have a general export pack that needs maybe a shelf life change. If you've submitted it in one market and a market gets approval in 2 months, and the other market takes 7 or 8 months or 9 months or even 12 months, how will you be able to implement this pack that is shared across the markets? So the complexity around also the timeline reviews across the different regions affect the supply chain. The complexity in terms of implementing, at what point will you be able to implement these changes on the pack that have been approved in maybe 2 out of 10 markets that is also sharing that pack. You're also looking at the submission criteria, whereby in a market, in terms of the difference in the guidelines, a market has said that this change is a minor variation, but when you go to submit the same exact change in a different market, it's considered as a major variation with different expectations and different timelines. So that in itself creates a lot of complication as an industry and to the regulator. And in terms of ensuring that that product is applied across the different markets. The guidelines that are being implemented, there are some countries that are more mature than others. However, they are implementing, that means they'll implement different guidelines at a different time. There's a lot of focus on track and trace, whereby we are seeing some markets and some countries moving faster than others. But this means that therein lies a complexity in how that one product will be supplied across the different markets that are different, implementing guidelines at a different timeline. When we're looking at pricing differences, we're also looking at different markets that have subsidies, others don't have subsidy. That means that already opens up an avenue for diverted products. Because if you find the reason why we have a lot of the packs that are coming from Turkey in Africa, it's because Turkey in itself is a subsidy market, meaning the products are coming out cheaper, and therefore the importer or distributor is easy to buy from that market and bring it into the African market. So that complexity in difference in prices also brings about a huge challenge. Lastly, there's also the lack of the implementation of parallel importation guidelines. So parallel importation, as we all know, is a good thing because it allows and enhances access to our patients. However, it's looking about how to implement it. What are the controls around ensuring that the packs or the parallel importation guidelines are implemented and operationalized in the right manner with the right regulatory controls, and that they don't open an opportunity for diverted products to come into the market. That is food for thought in terms of how we ensure that it's sorted. Quickly, in terms of bringing the enablers to supply chain, I'll just quickly run that because I've talked about the issues in depth, and it's the vice versa. So it's about convergence of regulations, making sure that we are having similar guidelines across the markets. It's about mutual recognition. It's about reliance. We've been talking about reliance the whole day, and reliance, of course, reduces the timelines for post-approval changes. When you're looking at the MOQ, the minimum order quantity, it's about looking at the pooled procurement policies and standardizing and reviewing the timelines for post-approval changes, streamlining the submission categories, developing and the capacity of the regulators, and WHO maturity, GBT, which we've talked about, is a very quick win to harmonize across the regions, whereby once we have WHO maturity for most of the regulators, it means that they're all singing the same tune. Actually, they have the almost similar guidelines. So as an industry, that is helping to streamline in terms of even preparing our dossiers for submission across the markets. So in terms of labeling and packaging requirements, our previous speaker even talked about how that can be divided into 2 zones for the Arabian countries. I think those kind of solutions are very quick and easy for us as a region to adopt for Africa, and for us to ensure that we are now having a more streamlined and a simplified supply chain. Looking at opportunities of embracing digital health solutions by digitalizing and increasing efficiency, and also implementing the post-approval, post-market surveillance systems. There's also the opportunity to looking into supply chain toolkits. This is something that has been adopted by the US FDA and other markets across the regions, whereby they've come up with a supply chain toolkits that actually addresses most of the areas that are affected by supply chain. So it's looking at the good manufacturing practices that talks about now the packaging element. It's looking at a good distribution practice that talks about having a clear-cut distribution channel across the regions. Ensuring that there is good import and export practices across the region that controls, and this is where we are talking about parallel importation, that provides a very clear and controlled way of doing importation and exportation. Also looking at clinical retail pharmacy practices to ensure that the storage and dispensing is done in the right manner. When we're looking at the product security, this is something that was mentioned earlier. It's about the diversions, creating clear guidelines around risk management of the supply chain, managing incidences, and also logistics and supply chain management. When we're talking about detection technology, it's utilizing the digital space and ensuring that we are working in the right space in terms of digitalization, surveillance, monitoring, and creating single points of contact. So as I wind up, I'm lastly going to talk about digitalization and sustainability in supply chain. Some of the ways that quick wins is ensuring that we adopt digitalization to its fullness, whereby in terms of detection technology, we use that to be able to provide the authentication systems by creating the covert and overt features for product security. We are also looking at digitalization for the track and trace, because track and trace is a good process for us to ensure that we are able to identify and share product information. We are also able to authenticate and create a better traceability of our products and harmonize these systems across Africa. It's also looking at post-market surveillance, how we share this data across the region. Electronic labeling is one of the ways of ensuring sustainability. It also reduces in terms of our footprint, carbon footprint, so that let's look at adopting electronic labeling in our packs, ways of reducing waste by ensuring that we have a clear-cut guidelines on supporting this as well. So yeah, thank you. Sorry, I just ended it too fast, but yes.
So thank you very much, Dr. Winnie, for your informative presentation. And now we will move to another perspective for covering this topic for today with our speaker, Dr. Zakiya Al-Kurdi, and her presentation around ensuring quality of medicine and the role of the U.S. Pharmacopoeia. Dr. Zakiya Al-Kurdi is the Regulatory Affairs and Public Policy Director for EMEA region in USP. Dr. Zakiya has over more than 30 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry, in QC, QA, R&D, and the regulatory affairs, as well as the business development. Dr. Zakiya held several executive and managerial positions during her work in the pharmaceutical industry. As well, she is a member in several committees in Jordanian FDA. Dr. Zakiya has many research papers published in the scientific journals. She earned her PhD degree in biopharmaceutical science in 2015 from University Greenwich in UK. Today in her presentation, Dr. Zakiya will be sharing with us some info about the US Pharmacopoeia, as long as the standards and values of the USP, also the quality of medicine through the life cycle and supply chain. Please join me to welcome Dr. Zakiya to stage.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like really to thank the organizer for giving me the opportunity to present on USP work. Additionally, I would like really to thank our esteemed guests for making this day so fruitful, so informative, and so exciting till now. And hopefully it will continue, so you will not be bothered by my presentation. Thank you. So going forward, I will be talking about USP. I'll give, if you allow me, like a very few slide about USP, and then I will talk about how we at the USP work to ensure equality of medicine. After that, I'll give more examples of ensuring quality of medicine with USP through the life cycle and through the supply chain. So just to say about USP, with over 200 years old, we are working to improve global health through public standards and related programs. So we are not only focusing on standards, as many things that USP is a standard setting organization, but we are building on the science that led to the standards with related programs that help at the end of the day to ensure equality, safety, and the benefit of medicines and food. Within USP, as I said, is an independent scientific non-profit organization working globally. Within the staff, we have over 1,200 employees distributed between USA, China, India, and we have offices as well in Ghana and in Nigeria. I'm coming actually from our office in Basel, Switzerland. It's a small office, but operating within the EMEA region. As well, along with the USP employee, we have as well like 50-50 of external volunteers, scientific external volunteers who helps a lot with the standard setting, with the reference standard, with the monographs, and they serve within either the expert panel, expert committees, and like 20% with them are coming as well from the governmental, so they are like a governmental liaison within the USP as well. Within our vision for the cycle 2020-2025, we are working to meet our objectives through pillars, standards, and advocacy and capability buildings. And within the presentation, I'll show examples of how we are utilizing each pillar of those within our mission. So first of all, when we are talking about USP standard, this is the most common, the thing that everyone is talking about. So within our within our standard, we are talking about two types. There is the documentary standard and the reference standard. With the documentary standard, unfortunately, with this slide, you are missing the red book that everyone used to use within the laboratory. Because why? And because now it's all online access, so the subscription is becoming online. For this now we don't have any more the red book for the documentary standard. The documentary standard actually it brings the monographs which list the test that the product should be meeting in order to meet the requirement. Along with the documentary standard, we have the reference standard. Those are enables manufacturing testing for identification, related substance, impurity testing, limit test, assay, and dissolution. What we say all the time is that the combination between the reference standard and the documentary standard is the only way that conclusive result can be obtained. So, for example, if any OOS result is obtained through using alternative standard, that will, we will not be having the conclusive result at such end. Just to give you an idea about how we measured the importance of our reference standard and documentary standard, 2018 we did a survey in which within that survey 44 generic manufacturers participate with 92 replies, and from the replies we understood that the average time for formulation is reduced by 26% when the manufacturers are using USP standard. The method development time is reduced by 31%, the validation is reduced by 29%, and the total product development time is reduced by 19%. This survey outcome, actually it reaffirmed the importance of the documentary and the reference standard that USP is bringing. USP does not work alone, and within its work, it has partner all the time, and our partner actually, they are coming from governmental, regulatory authorities, from industry, and from academia as scientific. And within our work, actually, we collaborate all the time with the regulatory authorities, and this collaboration is strengthening USP work. So we work more on different levels. So we have one-to-one interaction with many of the regulatory authorities, and I think within the room here, we are engaged with the Egyptian Drug Authority, for example, with SAPRA, with Tanzania, with Ghana, with Zimbabwe, and with Sandra, with ANPP from Algeria, and from also global level, we are observer within the ICH, we are observer within the WHO, and with many other regulation. And we have this opportunity to advocate for medicinal equality issues in global policies, consulting at a different level of program of governments. The other partner I was mentioning, not only regulatory, I was mentioning about the scientific, the scientific partners as well as the industry, and usually the industry and the scientific, they come into the engagement with our expert committees and expert panels. And within the USP, within the last cycle, we have like 29 expert committee. Those expert committees are represented by science, either coming from academia or from industry. For example, in biologics, we have like 5 expert committees from polypeptide, biologics, vaccine, antibiotics, and advanced therapy. And I will take this opportunity to mention that early next year, early 2024, we will have the 29 expert committee open once again for volunteers, because it will be opening for the new cycle 2025-2030. So it will be an opportunity that many of you, if you wish to be part of those expert committees. Education and training. Within USP, we have, let's say, a very big platform of education. It does not cover only one topic. We are diversified. So starting from drug substance, drug product, biologics, good manufacturing practice, excipients, and so on. And how we deliver our training, either through classroom, open classroom, live classroom like this, or live online participation, or through a self-based education video available on USP education platform, which is open and accessible for everyone. Many of those education and training programs are complementary, so anyone can join. We have like a mailing system which should reach many of you. If not, and you are interested in having the reach for those training and education, please reach us for us. How we work to ensure equality of medicine, as I mentioned, I will take you through the life cycle and through the supply chain as 2 examples. So for the life cycle USP program, what we think is that it fits the 6 stages of the pharmaceutical manufacturing. So starting from research and development, starting from analytical method development, manufacturing, quality, stability, and post-marketing surveillance. And with all those stages, we look into from 4 different perspectives: from product, where we supply the reference standard; from publication, where we have our documentary; from services, either supporting post-marketing surveillance, or for example, verification program, or innovation. It's very important to talk, to have like a few words about post-marketing surveillance, because today we heard a lot about post-marketing surveillance, and through a program which was supported by USAID, post-marketing surveillance started from 2009, where it was called Medicine Quality Monitoring, and evolved to Risk-Based Post-Marketing Program 2019. As an advocacy, we have published one document called Guidance for Implementing Risk risk-based post-marketing surveillance, quality surveillance in low and mid-income countries. This was a publication and a work supported by USAID. The summary of this publication, it shows very important, for example, what medication that should go under the post-marketing surveillance implementation, from which outlet those should be sampled, and how many outlets should be sampled accordingly. Post-marketing surveillance, how can it help? For sure, it will help, to stop manufacturing of falsified medication, access to unregulated product in retail sales, and the unconventional pharmacist outlet. However, still there is so much happening in this area. So we are talking about risk medicines and location risk. So we are talking about two risks. Even recently, 2022, we have the death of around 70 persons in Gambia due to the utilization of adulterated coffee preparation due to diethylene contamination presence. So the risk is not only to medicines, it's also as well to location. And hopefully through the risk-based post-marketing surveillance, we will be able to minimize this more and more. USP, when the issue of the diethylene glycol contamination happened, we worked quickly and we prepared what we call diethylene glycol toolkit. This toolkit compromised the material that were subject or have a potential to be contaminated with diethylene glycol, and we offered free, complimentary to everyone. Actually, it was available on USP website. It was communicated with many of the regulatory authorities, because many of the regulatory authorities went into landscaping for the diethylene glycol. We cascaded through APEC, the supply chain, and through Fight the Fakes Association. For the supply chain, as we mentioned, the USP actually work through the supply chain. So we cover our reference standard cover from manufacturing, distribution to administration. Beside the standards, we have also the manufacturing, the capability building, training, and so on. With the distribution, we look into good distribution practice, good storage practice. And with the administration, we have so much into the labeling, nomenclature, and even when COVID happened, we developed handling toolkits for the administration of the vaccine. Collaboration, we have a lot going on, as we said, that we work with our partner into achieving quality of medicine. So just a few examples about our documentary standards within the supply chain. For example, just recently, USP has launched one general chapter for supplier qualification. I know that at the end of the day, USP, we are not a regulatory authorities. However, what we are trying to do is to provide more documents that support the manufacturer to implement and to abide by good manufacturing practice. We have, for example, some general chapters about stability. We have for packaging and distribution. We have for temperature exclusion, for example, upon shipping, if it happens, how to calculate the mean kinetic temperature and evaluation when the temperature exclusion happening through the shipping. Medicine supply map, this is a new initiative that USP had brought, building on the information that we have on the different manufacturers all around the world. So we're trying to utilize like 200,000 data points, and through this we are bringing a medicine supply map specifying each generic product, the manufacturer, the different manufacturer, the API supplier, and sometimes the key starting material utilizing this. And this will be very helpful for the policymaker in order to anticipate shortages that might come in with the products in the country. In summary, what we see that as a value of our quality standards, first of all, it provides a scientific basis for decision-making in regulatory review, manufacturing, and enforcement. It contributes to research and development, fostering innovation, ensure a consistent approach to quality for innovator and generic product. It assesses the quality of drug product in commerce and monitor for counterfeit and substandard product and quality either manufactured or imported. We will continue this development through and support. So we'll continue developing the reference standard, the publication. We will expand our collaboration with our partner, both in regulatory, both in manufacturing and academia, and we'll be continue the supporting of analytical and regulatory capabilities for our partners. And with this, I thank you. Thank you so much.
Hello? It's not working. Wait, is it working? So thank you very much, Dr. Zakia, for your presentation. I think we have less than 5 minutes, and I really don't want to take much from the next presentation, from the next session. So please, I assume that you might have questions to our speakers. Feel free to connect with them after the sessions. If you allow me just a couple of questions very quickly before we pass the time. So Dr. Winnie, starting with Dr. Winnie, please. So as a trade association and the chairperson for the COPI, can you please share with us the role of COPI being, I mean, you are the voice of the industry. Could you please share with us your role and the efforts of COPI you are doing to strengthen the supply chain and having a secure supply chain in Africa, please?
Thank you, Donia. Just briefly, what we are doing as an industry voice is, number one, ensuring that we are stakeholders and we are engaged with the regulator, and that we are able to share feedback. I think I've articulated some of the challenges we are facing as industry, and being able to share this feedback to the regulators is a key way of enabling and supporting the changes that we want to see in the future. So ensuring that we have continuous and regular feedback channels, engaging with the regulator on a regular basis is one way. The other way is ensuring that as an industry voice, we are also able to support with pilot programs. So in terms of if there's something new that they're implementing, if it's track and trace, we as the industry, we want to put our hand up and be among the team that is supporting with the pilot program, so that we are able to tackle issues together with the regulator, not following after, but doing this thing together. I think it helps. It increases the efficiency, and we are able to address issues as they come up. The other issue is also looking in ways of supporting regulatory harmonization across with the regulators as well, because industry are the people who are actually submitting these registrations. They are the companies that are actually providing feedback back to the regulators. So being able to support regulatory harmonization is key for us also in terms of industry support.
Thank you, Dr. Winnie. Can't agree more. I think the open dialogue is key between the industry and the regulatory agencies to have things moved and improved, definitely. I think my next question would be for you, Dr. Zakia, and my question is, if you can share with us more engagement that the U.S. Pharmacopoeia can do with the companies, like to support them in accreditations, for example, like the WHO pre-qualification?
Yes, thank you so much. First of all, we can address many issues with the pharmaceutical company, and not only the WHO pre-qualification. WHO pre-qualification is one example where USP can do like a technical support. We have within our Global Health and Manufacturing Services unit at USP, we have a highly dedicated team who went into the WHO pre-qualification support with many other regulatory authorities and even manufacturers. So starting from assessing the facility, trying to see the gaps, and then how to go to that journey along with. That can goes, for example, on one-to-one base USP and the company. However, additionally, what I would like to mention is that we can work as well with the association. For example, if the association addresses certain gaps within the capabilities of the manufacturer, for example, to bring more. So we can work with the association, bringing some education platform, for example, for as many as pharmaceutical companies can be, so that another involvement, for example, which we can do one-to-one with the association, but bringing many manufacturing as possible.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zakia. I think unfortunately, we're out of time, so I have to conclude this session. And before this, I have to really thank you very much, all our speakers and our audiences, for your attention as well. I think it's a critical topic, a very hot topic, the supply chain, and how it needs this collaboration and coordination between all the stakeholders to ensure that we have this, to ensure the integrity of our supply chains in our markets, to deliver high quality products to our markets and minimize the supply disruption as much as we can. So thank you very much for your presentation. And please allow me to introduce our next session before we step down. So our next session, I think it will be with the pharma manufacturing. And the moderator for this session is Dr. Winnie Naganga. Dr. Winnie, please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
She's just going to go fetch her next information. 1 minute.
Thank you for your patience. Yeah, so on to our next session. A very exciting session indeed. It's on pharma manufacturing in Africa. It's about seeing the future, seeing what we can do in terms of localization and contract manufacturing. It's also looking into the opportunities of growth through different the industry zones. So I'm very pleased to start off the session by inviting Dr. Mona Musa. She's the Regulatory Affairs Associate Director at HICMA. Dr. Mona Musa has a bachelor's degree of pharmaceutical science from the Faculty of Pharmacy in Shams University. She's been working in the Egyptian Drug Authority over the past 14 years within managerial positions as head of Human Pharmaceutical Regulatory and Technical Affairs. She's also worked with the administration since 2019 to 2022. Currently, and since 2023, she is the Regulatory Affairs Associate Director at HICMA Egypt. Welcome, Dr. Mona.
Thank you, Winnie, for the introduction. Please let me express my pleasure to be here sharing in the Africa Reg Summit for my second year, and welcome all the attendees, wishing you are having a happy stay at Egypt. We will start today about a very important topic. I believe localization should be our objective and we should go faster for this objective. Localization as a definition is the process of producing pharmaceutical products within a specific region. We should be focusing on different aspects of the pharmaceutical value chain, starting from research and development, clinical trials, API manufacturing, fill and finish of the product, packaging, distribution, and marketing. If we have to go through the levels of localization, level 1, when the country is just importing finished pharmaceutical products to distribute to the patients. Level 2, when the countries are deciding to start by a simple part of production, which is packaging and labeling. Level 3, full production of the pharmaceutical finished products, starting from formulation of imported active pharmaceutical ingredients. Level 4, when the country is starting to have API manufacturing. Level 5 is the level where research and development starts to take place in the country for new formulations, new processes, and new molecular entities. Why do we need localization? Really, localization has more than one benefit for the country. It plays a vital role in maintaining resilience of the national healthcare systems. It improves access to high-quality, affordable medicines. It minimizes the risk of drug shortages and also overcomes the overdependence of drug imports, leading to self-reliance and self-sufficiency. It has a key role in leveraging local assets and developing local capabilities, plus the economic benefits that can be gained from localization due to reduced import costs, reduction in the government spending on the sector of health, also with the investments for the country and exports to different countries will increase its income. Localization also impacts the development of a skilled labor force and investment in R&D, driving innovation and global competition. What happened within the COVID-19 pandemic and the shutdowns of several API manufacturing sites, some countries also were putting restrictions of exporting drug ingredients and finished pharmaceutical products, has revealed the fractures in the global pharmaceutical and medical value chains can affect any country, and made it urgent to focus on pharmaceutical localization efforts. Localization requires, actually, I believe that the first point is the most important point, is the cooperation of all the stakeholders, the governments, the policymakers, regulatory bodies, educational institutes, R&D organizations, and pharmaceutical companies. All are partners to succeed and to reach the goal of localization, to be working hand in hand, going through the roadmaps that each country is putting to reach that goal. Of course, the local manufacturers should be complying with the local regulations to ensure the drug product's quality, safety, and efficacy. The start of localization plans should be including partnerships, joint ventures, and technology transfer agreements, also partnerships with the local universities and research institutes. What are the efforts and what are the initiatives that governments can have to support the localization? Maybe some legal entities put legislations to support local production and give benefits for the locally manufactured products, like pricing benefits for locally products. It should be affordable for the patient, but still profitable for the company. Some benefits can include product registration benefits, expedition of the registration timelines, faster manufacturing plant certifications, tender purchase preferences, incentives on export for other countries, incentives for innovation, tax exemptions and custom duty exemptions. Some countries are able to give financial support for the local manufacturers. There is a fact that we should all be agreeing that 100% self-sufficiency is not realistic. There will always be trade, there will always be importation within the country, but to keep our pharma trade balance with higher exports and the minimal importation as we can. Pharmaceutical manufacturing in Africa is not a new phenomenon. We have a history of 125 years pharma manufacturing history. Started by Vaxera site at Egypt, 1896, and another pharmaceutical site for drugs, 1930. A quick look on the African pharmaceutical manufacturing footprint. We have the dotted countries, Egypt, South Africa, Tunisia, and Senegal, having both vaccines and drug manufacturing. The countries which are colored in green having drug manufacturing with higher number of manufacturing sites in Egypt, South Africa, and Nigeria. What we should be considering, what we should be working for the next time, we should be focusing to build local capabilities across the pharmaceutical value chain, including API manufacturing and R&D with innovation systems. I think it's an opportunity between the African countries to work on more contract manufacturing. The idea of contract manufacturing where an international business is an international business in which a company gets into an agreement with a local manufacturer in a foreign country. It's a kind of outsourcing to let the manufacturer, the contract manufacturer, produce the product according to my specifications to leverage the expertise and resources of the contract manufacturer. Contract manufacturers should be considering the regulatory requirements and the industry regulations, compliance, and having standards like quality management system to ensure safe and high quality product. At Egypt, EDA had a guideline to regulate manufacturing for export, which permits the production of products which are not registered at EDA to be manufactured at Egyptian manufacturing sites for the sake of export only. The process starts by local manufacturing site, submits to EDA the contract between the foreign company, attached with the registration license within the foreign country and the country of origin, to get a preliminary approval to start importation of the API and start the manufacturing process accordingly, then gets an approval to re-export the product. Here, no technical review by EDA takes place for the file. It's just agreement to manufacture within an Egyptian manufacturing site. I believe I was having a rapid and a quick sharing of ideas about the importance of localization, and I know that we were all having lots of information today and fruitful discussions. Just kept it short to go to the point for the idea of localization. Thank you again.
Oops. Yes, so thanks for that. Short and sweet session. So over to our next speaker for today. Oh, he's not. Okay. Oh, all right. More time for us, Dr. Mona. Okay, so we can go quickly into the discussions, and maybe, Madre, we might have a session, one question from the audience at least. This is the first session that is allowing the the delegates to give a question. So, Donia, just 1 minute. So Mona, you were talking about 100% self-sufficiency, that we cannot be able to achieve this. Yeah? Also eager to hear in terms of the Egyptian authorities and how the support has been in terms of localization of manufacturing.
Okay. Although Egypt has regulations that permits having only 2 imported products, and the rest of the market from the same generic to be for the local manufacturers. These 2 places are one for the brand and the other place for imported generic product. This supports localization and keeps the idea and the value of that 100% sufficiency will never be a truth. And we will always need to have the brand products and the new innovations till we work to have ours. So this is the idea. First, the legislations and the regulations are supporting through this idea and giving exceptions in some cases like products which are on drug shortage lists or products that have high technology. It's permitted to be more than 2 products, to be 5 products in such cases. So this is the start of legislations and many of the initiatives that we have been talking about, like tax exemptions, custom duty exemptions, like faster track registration for the especially for shortage listed products. Also, we have other initiatives like export incentives, like innovation incentives. It's a new regulation by EDA to support innovation, and even if it's incremental, not a total new chemical entity, just an incremental innovation, they give incentives on these values.
Thank you, Dr. Mona. Maybe you can also give us a brief on illustrating to us the difference between export-only registration and manufacturing for export.
Okay. For the export registration, it's a type of registration. EDA reviews the file, reviews the technical file that the Egyptian license holder submits. They review studies, they do analysis, they do everything, and they ensure all aspects of the product like safety and quality and efficacy, releasing an MA registration license, permitting the product to have further certificate of pharmaceutical product to go for registration in other countries. This is the idea of export-only registration. It's a total registration, but intended for export only, not to be marketed in Egypt. On the other hand, and what I was speaking about on my last slide, it's a kind of support for the license holders from other countries, foreign countries, to have the benefit of the Egyptian manufacturing sites and to manufacture products within these sites. We have more than 170 sites and 700 manufacturing line in Egypt. So it's a benefit for other countries that can have the chance to manufacture within the Egyptian sites without registration. No need to register the product at EDA, no need to submit any technical file, just I have the agreement with the foreign license holder or the foreign company, submitted to EDA. EDA gives a permission to the company to re-export it without any registrations.
Okay, and what timelines between the two in terms of timelines?
The export registration takes normal line of registration, maybe faster for faster support to companies, while the process of export manufacturing takes few days for the approval. Just you submit, you get the approval within few days, maximum 1 week.
Oh, excellent. Any questions from the audience? I can see one okay, 2. Can someone please pass the mic?
Hi, Dr. Mona. While we understand localization could be a way forward for Africa, where do we draw the line, right? Because we also, it's not that simple because there is an element of quality and quantity that gets involved. So is there a bifurcation? While you have amazingly bifurcated the import and then, going into CMO kind of an arrangement and then going into API manufacturing and then R&D, but a bifurcation in terms of which products or which target segments to be localized. For example, would it be generics to begin with, or would it be vaccinations to begin with? Because we're also talking about the total cost of ownership, right? So we talk about the infrastructure that is required to produce a high value drug. We're also talking about what is the volume requirement in that local region, and then the benefits that are associated with it, right? So where does the industry start? What would be the best starting point, and what would be the further evolving element in terms of whether it's going to go from generics, solid oral dosage, and then probably go into the liquids and vaccinations?
We all believe that we have challenges and we have economic issues, and the start should be, as we all agree today, to go together, to complete each other. The continent has very good capabilities that we can work on it, we can complete each other and have the start. I mentioned in my presentation the tech transfers and the opportunities of having partnerships with other multinational companies, and it's a good start, and I believe we should be depending on that as an initial step, so we can proceed and we can have our own manufacturing sites. Even in the API manufacturing, this can be a start to have partnerships with leader sites at that, to have the experience and leverage our capabilities by the tech transfers and the partnerships.
Thank you.
Thank you. One more question there.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for the fruitful discussion. You just mentioned that there is 700 manufacturing lines in Egypt.
Yes.
I have two questions. The first one, the 700 are all governmental, or it's including the private sector? And is it only for chemical product, or there is other for biotechnological product? This is the first question. If you want to answer and then go for the second one.
Please let me answer the first question. The 700 manufacturing lines are owned by both governmental and private sector. The lines is variant. We have variant lines. Newly and recently, Egypt started the biological products manufacturing and biosimilars. We have also a specific site for anti-cancer products. We have variable lines. We have newly registered lines for PANAMs. We have unit dose lines. So there is many opportunities in Egypt, and we believe we are continuing.
Okay, thank you so much. The second thing, if there will be a brand, that not a generic, that will be manufactured locally in Egypt, what about the intellectual property or the patency? Will it be complementing the international patency of the product, or it will just start and have a new rules if we'll be manufacturing the same brand, not a generic?
I believe we are starting to build our experience in the area of patency and so on. So, in different countries at Africa, it's not that strong, but it's starting as a process to keep the idea of innovation more practical and the challenges that the company have to formulate a new innovative product to be protected.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for those good questions. I was also quite excited to hear that the first vaccine manufacturing happened in 1896.
Yes.
In which country? In Egypt?
Egypt, Vaxera site.
Wow, wow.
We have a great history.
Yeah, that's a great history.
In Africa as a whole.
Yes, we
The
should
second
celebrate.
site was in South Africa.
Wow. We should celebrate this as Africa. I believe those are really good strides, big milestones. 1896. Okay, so I think on that note, I'd like to end our session. Unless there is a burning question, I can see I have 6 minutes left. Any other question from the delegates? Just one more? If not, I think I can close that session. And thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Mona.
Winnie. Thank you for the
Thank you.
attendees. Thank you.
Working? Yes. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Yasmin Meher. I'm the Regulatory Affairs Director for MSD, Merck Sharp and Dom Egypt Cluster, and I'm very pleased to be the moderator for the biosimilar session today. I know this is the session before the last, separating you from the end of the conference today. So I hope the session will be very short and crisp. So in the session today, you'll be hearing about the outlook of the biosimilars in the region, with a closer look at Egypt, which has high-profile authority and vast experience in the biosimilars area. And with that, I would like to introduce our speakers today. Our first speaker is Ahmed Ghazala. Dr. Ahmed is currently the Regulatory Affairs Manager for Egypt and other cluster countries at Amgen. He has more than 5 years of demonstrated record in the biopharmaceutical and pharmaceutical industry. Dr. Ahmed started his career in the academic field as teaching assistant in the Faculty of Pharmacy, Future University in Egypt. Then he moved to the regulatory affairs field in the Egyptian Health Authority in the Biologicals Department. Afterwards, he joined Amgen, where he took on expanded roles. So welcome on stage, Dr. Ahmed. And I'll be presenting also our second speaker today, Dr. Hibatullah Ibrahim. Dr. Hiba is currently the head of Biological Products Marketing Authorization Administration at the Egyptian Drug Authority. She's also the EDA representative in the African Medicine Regulatory Harmonization, where she acts as the chairperson, Regulatory Capacity Development Subcommittee on Vaccines Regulatory Oversight. Dr. Hiba also played a very important role within the team which developed the Reliance Pathway procedures for the registration of biologicals in Egypt, in addition to updating the guidelines of biosimilars in Egypt. Let me welcome also on stage Dr. Hiba. And we'll start with the first presentation with Dr. Ahmed. أحمد هو
Thank you, Dr. Yasmin, for your introduction, and thank you all for having me today to talk about the overview of biosimilar in Africa from the industry perspective. I am Ahmed Ghazala, Regulatory Affairs Manager in Amgen for Eli Cluster. Going through the agenda for our today discussion, I will talk about the biosimilar versus the interchangeable definition. Also, the biosimilar market share worldwide, having a close overlook on the biosimilar in Africa, current regulation for biosimilar, current challenges and opportunities. In the recent years, there is a big debate between the differentiation between the biosimilar definition and interchangeable product definition, where the biosimilar development is starting from comparative or dependent mainly in the comparability data, starting from comparative analytical characterization till reaching the comparative clinical study. Also, so the biosimilar is defined as a biosimilar is a biological product that's highly similar to and has no clinical meaningful difference from the reference product. Also, typical biosimilar cost, the development cost starting from $100 million reaching to $300 million, and takes from 6 to 9 years to go from the analytical characterization step to reaching the regulatory approval. The interchangeable product is a biosimilar with additional interchangeability study. Is a biosimilar, so the interchangeable product is defined as a biosimilar expected to produce the same clinical result as the reference product in any given patient. And the switching between the biosimilar, the proposed product, and the reference product does not increase the safety risk or decrease the effectiveness compared to using the reference product without switching. Biosimilar also have recorded an impressive growth in the market share worldwide. So biosimilar sales have reached over 14 billion US dollar, represent 9% of the total biologics market in 2020. The global biosimilar market size is expected to reach over 76.2 billion US dollar by 2030, registering a compound average growth rate of 15.9 from 2023 to 2030. Also, we have to mention that the first approved biosimilar in the European Medicine Agency was in 2005, and also the first approved biosimilar for FDA was in 2015. Currently, the European Medicine Agency has approved more than 70 biosimilar, and also the FDA has approved more than 41 biosimilar up to date. And this biosimilar covering 11 unique biological molecules. Also, we have to mention that the biosimilar competition reduce the high cost of the reference product. Oncology therapeutic, as an example, as shown in this figure, all the 5 biosimilar launched for the trastuzumab, launched at a discount price for both the whole acquisition cost and the average sales price may reach to up minus 22 from the reference product. Also, the increasing biosimilar use and the increasing competition of biosimilar use that does not only impact the biosimilar prices, but also the reference product prices. The prices of biosimilar have decreased at a negative compound average growth rate of -9 to -24. Also, the price of reference product have decreased at a negative compound average growth rate from -4 to -21%. Biosimilar uptake from the market share continues to climb. Biosimilar have gained a significant market share in the majority of the therapeutic area where they have launched, and the first to launch biosimilar tend to capture a greater portion of the market share compared to later entrant or to the later approved biosimilar. Moving from the global biological view, global view for the biologics and biosimilar, to a closer look to have an overview of the biologic and biosimilar market share in the Middle East and Africa. The biologics market share in MEA region has increased from 14.6 in 2018 till reaching 18.8 in 2022. With approximate sales reaching up to 6.9 billion US dollar, with originator dominating the market space. But also we have to mention that the biosimilar market share or biosimilar uptake from this market share has seen an upward trend, as the market share increased from 1% in 2018, reaching to 4.3 in 2022. Overview of biosimilar in Africa. Africa represents an interesting case for the biosimilar with a young population of more than 1.3 billion. Africa economy also is a world second fastest growing economy, and the GDP is expecting to reach to 4.3 in 2023, according to the African Development Bank. The African continent has 54 states, and each country has its own regulatory body, and the biosimilar regulatory framework is clearly moving forward at a different stage of maturity. The level of biosimilar experience varies across the market and divided into 3 categories: prominent, moderate, and minor experience in the biosimilar specifically. So also the pharma companies understand the right opportunity for the biosimilar and also are eyeing their place in this market. Biosimilar regulation overview in Africa. Biosimilar guidelines in most of African countries are following the ICH, EMA, FDA, and WHO with a specific requirement. Registration file usually submitted in a CTD format, separate pathway for the local product, no specific pricing regulation for the biosimilar in the Africa, no specific labeling. We are still following the reference approval in the reference approved biosimilar. timeline start only from 3 months up to 2 years, maybe reaching to 3 years in some African countries. Talking about the biosimilar challenges in Africa, we can say first one, the regulatory variation of regulatory standards for biosimilar. While some country has a specific regulation or specific pathways for the biosimilar, still we have a lot of countries, of African countries, still they did not have a specific regulation for the biosimilar, for the submission, and are following the general biological submission pathway. Difficulties of pricing or discrepancy of pricing for biosimilar, lack of interchangeability guidelines, biomimics or intended copies are available despite of insufficient data to prove biosimilarity and to prove also or to satisfy biosimilar regulatory requirement. So we need additional awareness to in the market and to HCPs to differentiate between the biomimics and also to differentiate between the biomimics and the biosimilar. Have a quick overview over the opportunity of biosimilar in Africa. First one, we can start by the harmonization. The African Medicine Agency is a big step forward for the establishment of global harmonized regulatory framework in Africa. Reliance pathway, which may lead to decrease the timeline, as a reference, as the national regulatory authority may rely on the other reference regulatory authority, which decrease the timeline for sure for the review and also increase the accessibility for the biosimilar in the market. Moving to the third one, which is the WHO pre-qualification. We see that the WHO starting to pre-qualify biosimilar medicine, which is increase worldwide access to the life-saving treatment. Cost saving also for the healthcare system. Competition, as we said in the previous slides, that the competition leading to decrease the cost not only for the biosimilar, but also for the reference product, leading to additional treatment option for the patient in Africa. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Hifat Ibrahim, the Head of Registration Administration of Biological Product in the Egyptian Regulatory Authority, with an experience more than 14 years in the regulatory field. I will talk with you about the regulatory updates for biosimilar products in Egypt. I will talk first about the establishment of EDA and our achievement in the previous years, the history of biosimilar guidelines, the updated guideline, and the registration pathways of biosimilar, the status of registered biosimilars in Egypt, and the enablers to the biosimilar entry in Egypt. The establishment of EDA starts with a presidential decree in 2019 to merge the three entities that was responsible for all the regulatory activity under umbrella of one entity. After the issuance of the law, there was a Prime Minister decree in 2022 for the executive regulation of the law. After establishment of EDA, there was a lot of achievement, starting from achieving maturity level 3 in vaccine scope in 2022, according to the WHO GBT tool, and we are now working on the achieving maturity level 3 also for medicine. In 2021, EDA joined the ICH as an observer, and we became a member in IPRP, and we had, in 2023, we achieved to be a member in the ICH as the first African country and the second Arabic country to be a member in ICH. For the biosimilar regulation, we're starting the guideline since 2015 with the first guideline for registration of biosimilar, followed by a ministerial decree 820 to specify timelines for registration of products that is registered in EMA and or FDA. followed by an update for the guideline in 2020, and then an EDA chairman decree in 2021 concerning the registration of all biological products, including biosimilar, and then the procedure for registration of biological products through the Reliance pathway in 2022, and finally was the last update for the biosimilar guideline in 2023. As we all know that the development of the biosimilar product starting from comprehensive analytical structural analytical process, then followed by a preclinical and clinical, and the evaluation of the biosimilar product depending on evaluating the totality of evidence. So the approval process of the biosimilar product depends on the technical assessment of the whole registration file, including comparability exercise covering quality, preclinical, and clinical, till guaranteeing the marketing authorization license. The updates in the guideline include structural update. We had updated the structure to illustrate more the approval process for the biosimilar product for both the imported and locally manufacturing product, including a decision tree to simplify the process of registration and the different steps of the registration for all products. The second update is for the scope. We had updated the scope to include more products according to case-by-case basis. And we had updated the requirement for the quality, preclinical, and the clinical to be harmonized with the latest international guideline. For example, the latest WHO guideline that was released in 2022 to update the biosimilar guideline. We had also included a roadmap for our local developer for the development aspects, along with the stepwise approach and totality of evidence, which are the main principles that we are evaluating the biosimilar product according to. We have different registration pathways for all the biological product, including the biosimilar. The normal track pathway with 120 working days timeline, the fast track pathway with 90 working days timeline, and finally the Reliance pathway with 2 levels. Level 1 with 30 calendar day, not working day, and the level 2 for 60 calendar days. Each pathway has its eligibility criteria. The normal track and fast track pathways are for local products, and the local products can register the product through the Reliance pathway because it's specific for the product that is registered and marketed in EMA and or FDA. The imported product can submit the product through the 3 pathways. The eligibility criteria for the fast-track pathways is the product should be for serious epidemic disease, orphan drug, or the product has an unmet medical need, or there is a shortage in the local supply. The Reliance pathway is for the product that is marketed and registered in EMA or FDA, and the submitted file should be the same file that is submitted to the reference regulatory authority, and the applicant should submit a complete unredacted assessment report and or the list of questions issued by the stringent regulatory authority. For the Reliance pathway, we also, for the level 1 pathway, the applicant can postpone the analysis for registration with the first shipment after issuing the marketing authorization license. The registered biosimilar product, we have 63 imported product and 7 locally produced product, and we have 10 imported product under registration and 31 locally manufactured product under registration. And the first locally manufactured product starting from the drug substance was recently registered in September 2023. The enablers for biosimilar entry in Egypt, including the new guideline and the continuous update of the guidelines to be harmonized with the international one, the Reliance concept and the Reliance pathway, which considered for the registration of imported biosimilar product, and we have technical support services supported by EDA experts including interactive workshops with industry and continuous engagement during the product development for our local developer. The scientific advice service is done by an EDA experts in the whole items for the development and quality preclinical and clinical. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hiba and Dr. Ahmed, for the very insightful and informative presentations. And I think we have a few minutes to ask a couple of questions. But first, before asking the questions, I would like to acknowledge the EDA achievements Dr. Hiba just mentioned on her slides, and the EDA aspiration to advance and enhance in the regulatory environment in Egypt, which was recognized by reaching WHO maturity level 3 within the scope of the vaccines, also becoming ICH members as the first agency in Africa and the second in the Middle East or the Arab countries, which is great achievement and a lot of work done by the EDA behind this. And I think in order for the EDA to move from ICH observer to ICH members, a lot of steps have been taken towards applying reliance practices. And I can't have Dr. Hiba on stage without asking about reliance and what does this mean also from regulator and perspective of the health agency in the EDA, as well as asking Dr. Hiba about updates on any steps will be taken to expand and enhance the life cycle maintenance also to include the reliance scope.
Before issuance of the Reliance guideline, we had a pilot phase extended for more than 8 months. So just when we issue the final guideline, it will be applicable for both the industry and the regulators. Actually, it's of added value not only for the industry but also for the regulator, because they are exposed to more to the comments and assessments of stringent regulatory authority like EMA and FDA. So it's a win-win-win situation, win for the industry, win for the regulator, and win for the patients. Also, it gives them the regulator the proper timeline for evaluating the local product. They have the time. There is no backlogs due to assessment each product. So they focus on evaluating the locally produced products. And we are now going to extend the Reliance pathway to the post-approval changes. We had published our new guideline for the variation for public consultation, and it will be recently, the final version will be recently published.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Hiba, and we are all looking so much forward to have also the Reliance extended to the variations and the life cycle maintenance, and very happy to hear that Reliance also is bringing resource efficiency so that assessors can focus also with other files and not also resource efficiency, but also capacity and capability building from the regulator perspective and from the industry, as Dr. Ahmed mentioned, accelerated the path to the patient and also resource efficiency, I think, internally. Very good. So one more last question for Dr. Hiba. About the biosimilars guidelines. Congratulations first for the update of the biosimilar guidelines. A lot of updates are coming from the Bio-In Central Administration recently. And for the biosimilar guidelines, we would like to understand more when you say that the scope has been updated, you updated the scope. What does this mean, the update of the scope?
The previous scope in the previous guideline was specifically for the biotechnology products, but we extend the product, the scope for more products, for the well-characterized product and the product that the manufacturer could prove the biosimilarity. So we keep the door open for more products to work on the biosimilarity, but the applicant should think about the well-characterized product.
Very good. I think this is also a very good news and update. And for the sake of time, we don't have more questions. I don't know if there are any questions from the floor, if Madri can support with this. Okay. So thank you so much. I would like to thank Dr. Hiba and Dr. Ahmed again, and thanks for all the audience for your attention.
I would like to invite up the last session of the day. We're running about 45 minutes late. We're now discussing the landscape of clinical trials in Africa. A very important topic as we move forward with manufacturing. We would also like to know how to get there. I'd like to invite up Dr. Sahar Ibrahim, Regional Head of Clinical Operations, MENA from IQVIA.
Hello, everyone. Do you hear me well? Okay. So first of all, I would like to thank you all for the invite, for the kind invite for this event. I believe that I do have a mission impossible. It's now 5:20 minutes. It's the end of the day. I believe everyone is exhausted. But I promise that I will do my best to make it an interesting session, knowing that it's completely out of the box. So today you have been discussing various topics in relation to drug registration, but now we will speak about clinical trials. So I will do my best to make. And as you all know, clinical trials have been on a rise in the past few years, with increasing number of clinical trials conducted in Africa. However, we still feel that Africa is lagging behind. And the regulatory aspects is one of the key areas for speedy startup as well as oversight of clinical trials. And we believe that we need to understand the Africa clinical trial landscape so that we can work on what would encourage the industry for better investment of clinical trials in the continent. That said, I would like to introduce the eminent distinguished speakers so that we can take this into discussion today as a last session. The first speaker is Professor Manal Hamdi Said, who is the Director of Clinical Research Center of Ain Shams University. This center is called Masri, meaning Egyptian. Professor Manal is a professor of pediatric, and she is the chair of the pediatric department. She is a founding member of the Egyptian National Committee for Control of Viral Hepatitis since 2006, contributed to the establishment of the nationwide network for more than 120 specialized liver centers, providing antiviral therapy for more than 3.5 million HCV-infected patients. She collaborated on development of the National Action Plan for Prevention and Control of Viral Hepatitis, published in the year 2014, with a representative from the WHO, the US, and CDC, Pasteur Institutes, as well as the national stakeholders. She's the governing board member of the International Coalition for the Elimination of Hepatitis B since 2020, and among the board of directors for the Hepatitis Fund. She's also co-organizing and co-chairing numerous international meetings on viral hepatitis and the liver disease in Europe, US, and Africa. She co-founded and co-chaired the Conference on Liver Disease in Africa and is the president of the Society on Liver Disease. Let me welcome Professor Manal. I would like also to welcome to the stage Dr. Rania Ibrahim, who is the General Manager of General Administration of Clinical Trials of Biological Innovative Product as well as Clinical Studies at the Egyptian Drug Authority. Dr. Manal has almost 19 years of experience as a regulator governing various fields as GCP, good pharmacovigilance practice, regulatory affairs, pharmaceutical production, quality assurance, as well as technical methodology. She gained significant experience working through the Egyptian Drug Authority Task Force through the journey of achieving maturity level 3 in vaccine scope according to the WHO, and was involved in the regional joint assessment procedure since its beginning in the year 2017, responsible for assessing and evaluating and monitoring the conduct of different phases of clinical trials. So welcome, Dr. Rania. And would like to invite to the stage Nailiti Biki, who is the director at a CRO called Africa Lead Tech Research, and she is the chairperson of the South Africa Clinical Research Association. Nailiti actually has an experience of over 17 years, diverse experience in clinical trials in the capacity of clinical operation, project management across Africa, Asia, as well as Europe. Her expertise lies in the regulatory matters, crafting comprehensive SOPs, training programs. She is the SACRA chairperson, and she advocates for clinical trials and mentorship programs, consistently sharing knowledge and staying updated. So welcome to the stage, Mrs. Biki. Okay. And I trust that we do have Rosemary virtually. She could not make it, okay. So this gives me the chance to welcome to the stage Dr. Elvis Tamfak, who's a senior research officer at the Africa CDC. He's based in Ethiopia. His background is training in clinical medicine and public health with over 15 years of experience in clinical research and comprehensive case management. Working in Malawi for 3 years as a field principal investigator, generating relevant clinical evidence to support the Malawian Ministry of Health changing the policy for HIV. He's a member of the European Society of Microbiology and Infectious Disease. And he co-authored many of the peer-reviewed publications in high leadership and international journals, and member of many collaborative working groups serving in scientific and advisory groups addressing research in human health. Let me welcome Dr. Elvis, who will also start this interesting panel discussion by his presentation about optimizing the efficiency of the African clinical trials ecosystem. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for this very nice presentation. So I'm going to be talking about optimization of the clinical trial, optimizing the efficiency of the African clinical trial ecosystem. And the outline of this discussion would be as follows. So I'll first of all start by giving you a small background on Africa CDC, so as to set the stage for us to be able to understand how Africa CDC plays a role in optimizing the clinical trial ecosystem in Africa. Then we're going to do a small snapshot on the trends of clinical trials and research. Then just an overview on how to optimize clinical trials in Africa. I'll try to summarize all of this in a very short time because there is so much to discuss about this. So with respect to Africa CDC, discussions on the need for a continental institution for public health started during the Abuja Special Summit that took place in 2013, when heads of states and government had to come together to discuss on the way forward to use research and innovation to reduce the burden of disease associated with HIV, TB, and malaria. Following that, the Ebola outbreak in West Africa fast-tracked this process and underpinned the relevance of such an institution. And by January 2017, the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention was launched. Barely 3 years after the launch of this institution, when it was still trying to make baby steps, the COVID-19 pandemic hit. And the role that Africa CDC played in defining the strategy and coordinating the response to the COVID-19 pandemic increased the relevance of this institution. And on its 5th anniversary in February 2022, the Assembly of Heads of States and Governments decided to elevate the statute of African CDC to become an autonomous health institution of the African Union, with the mission to support public health initiatives in member states and strengthen their capacity and capabilities of the public health institutions to detect, prevent, and control, quickly respond effectively to disease threats. So with this mission, the aspiration of Africa CDC is to become a world-class, self-sustaining and agile institution that champions Africa health security, sets the African public health agenda, and leads the coordination and coordinates continental efforts driven by a One Health approach. So within the strategic plan of Africa CDC 2023-2027, to attain the vision, we work on that 6 key priorities. I'm not going to go into the details of this, but I would just like to draw your attention to the fact that within these priorities, one key enabler is that of strengthening public health research and innovation to improve public health decision-making and practice. I'm sure we all agree that research is a cost-effective way of public health practice. And for us to be able to look at how this can impact the way we can do clinical trials on the continent, we'll just have a look at the global trend in clinical trials. And what we notice is that in 2020, about 358 candidates were in phase 2 or phase 3 of clinical trial. And when we look at the trend prior to COVID-19, we have the impression that these were mostly concentrated on HIV, TB, and malaria. And this goes without any surprise because these were at the time most of the diseases that were causing the highest burden of disease. However, when COVID-19 hit, there was a surge in these candidates as concerns COVID-19. And we can see that the number of clinical trials that were going on even surpasses the total number of the candidates that were already ongoing on malaria, HIV, and TB. This had its own consequences, but what we can notice is that the experience during the COVID-19 pandemic showed an unprecedented validation of a network approach to global health research. And one of the things that we could see was that there was leveraging of existing networks that were created during the Ebola crisis in West Africa, like Alert, Pandora, Prevail, which could now switch to do research on COVID-19. The additional investments that were done on COVID-19 research and development boost the research capacity, but the extent to which this can be sustained through continuous resourcing is not clear. Last but not least, the rapid pace at which clinical trials were conducted was both unprecedented and commendable. This did not go without a price. The flip side of the coin was that the influx of the influx of funding with pressure for quick results perpetuated two rapid churns of COVID-19 research, much of which was done with poor methodology, with very small sample sizes which could not be generalizable. And then also there was an absence of consistency in the approach to which trials will yield informative results, who to lead them and who to participate in these trials. So overall, the lesson that we learned from the COVID-19 experience is that the pandemic underscored the need for persistent, strong coordination and collaboration, and overall strengthening of research ecosystems to improve use of resources and create impact. So how does that translate moving forward? Sorry. When we look at the fact that the COVID-19 research space encouraged research through networks, and then we go back to look at how many countries on the continent participate in this type of network research of global importance, we see that very few countries actually do that, and the impression is that most of this research happens mostly in Eastern and Southern Africa. However, when we go to look at the data on the different research sites or research centers that are registered within our CTC network, because here, though we are laying emphasis on clinical trials and acknowledging the fact that clinical trials is the robust approach to validating or to accepting or rejecting hypotheses with respect to interventions, this does not exclude the fact that other centers are not doing research. So when we have a deep dive on the centers that are registered as centers for research, we see that many countries actually have centers carrying out research. But when you look at this map, we have the impression that South Africa and Egypt are leading. So we need to further analyze this data, first of all, to understand how these centers are currently networking with each other and how there is some harmonization across them. Then when we look at the different clinical trials that are ongoing at the different phases, we also see that South Africa and Egypt are dominating. But we really need to also look at this data to understand the capacity of these centers to be able to host large-scale clinical trials, and then we compare the cost of doing these trials within these centers. So if we come back to the candidates that had the highest number of to the diseases that had the highest number of candidates in 2020, and then we try to look at the number of clinical trial sites with respect to the burden, this comes out very clearly that it is not homogeneously distributed, and this could be driven by the burden of disease within these different sites. This therefore means that there is a need for prioritization such that research at the different sites may address problems that are key causes of public health problems within these sites. And for this, within the strategic plan of Africa CDC, as a health institution responsible for coordinating actions for public health practice, this is well captured in our approach, as I mentioned, that research is a cross-cutting enabler within this strategic plan. And without going into the details of what this is, the key things that we can pick out from this is that research agenda focusing on Africa's health priorities is key. Coordinated research and clinical trial ecosystems are very important. Alignment of clinical trial pipelines with African health priorities and policies and guidelines based on context-specific data are really important for us to be able to optimize how we do clinical trials and research on the continent. So for this, Africa CDC has identified two key areas where we need to have action. First of all, when we scope across many member states in Africa, the first thing we notice is there is no clear-cut research priority plan or a research agenda. So and more so, many countries are struggling with the process of defining the key priorities for which research can be done in order to use the outcome of research to better the lives of the populations. So for this, we propose to develop a research prioritization framework, which is going to be through two processes: a top-down approach, where we propose the strategies, and then a bottom-up approach through consultations, where we generate qualitative and quantitative data to define the criteria and the weightings for us to be able to use that for prioritization. Then we develop a comprehensive guidance document and broader stakeholder approach to regional consultations, such that we come out with a document which is going to serve us in the phase 2 of our activities to support member states to develop national research priorities or to update existing ones, such that using the same methodology and the same approach, aggregations of national research priorities could inform regional priorities. Then analysis of these regional priorities could serve as a basis to develop a continental research agenda. Then in the phase 3 part of this, through a coordinated approach to address the key health research problems, we would leverage the different networks, consortia, and regional working groups to ensure that the top priorities are addressed. Then we develop ways of monitoring and evaluating so as to have full control about which research is ongoing, at what stage are we, and what are the interim results that are coming out of this that we can use to define policy, which can permit us also to evaluate the impact of research that we are doing on the continent. This is within the 5-year strategic plan of the new Africa CDC strategic plan. However, as was mentioned in the morning, Africa CDC is a young institution that acknowledges the fact that before its creation, other institutions, other organs of the African Union were already doing so much work. So we believe so much in collaboration, in partnership, and it's within this that AU NEPAD and Africa CDC have established a 10-year roadmap on how to actually enhance the clinical trial ecosystem. And this goes through different phases. The first phase is where we design a coordination mechanism to be able to address this clinical trial ecosystem. We connect the different priority clinical trial networks using a hook and spoke model. Then we develop evaluation frameworks and establish impactful measurement baselines. Then we pilot this coordination approach where we are going to develop guidelines and framework documents to guide the way some of these networks function. Because I'm sure if you talk to people who belong to many research networks and consortia, there is no guidance or governance on how this consortia functions, who does what, or what are the approaches to deal with some of the bottlenecks that come through collaborative research, and how do people actually work within that space such that different capacities could be exploited through working in multiple networks. Then at this phase, we will do a pilot with, on 2 or 3 clinical trials. This will give us feedback information to be able to refine these frameworks and then measure our approach. Then in the 3rd phase, we scale up this coordination such that more clinical sites will come into the process. Then further expansion to many clinical sites. And within this movement, we will be evaluating the impact on how the information is generated, where the bottlenecks are, how regulation is done, how data is being shared among the different networks, how this data is accessible through interim analysis to be able to make decisions. So with this, I would like to say that for us to be able to optimize the clinical trial landscape, coordination is key. Leveraging capacity is another very, very important point. All of these are not only going to reduce duplication of effort, but the fact that we use different networks that are located on the different regions of the continent, acknowledging the diversity in phenotype, populations, and many characteristics would mean that addressing a key priority problem which affects many people on the continent could be done in a shorter time through increase in recruitment sites. The fact that different sites may have different capacities, both in material and in know-how, would mean exchange of these capacities could be done. And this way, trials could be shortened, we could have shortened recruitment times, larger numbers, which will increase the validity on the studies, and this coordination with, as well as localized analysis could inform policy. So our take-home message here is that for us to optimize the clinical trial ecosystem, we need to first of all start by defining our research priorities based on the context, and these priorities should be related to the needs of the people. We use a coordinated network approach to these clinical trials to address these priorities. Then we use a hub and spoke approach for clinical trial scale-up. I would like to stop here, but I would also like to say that 15 minutes is not enough for us to discuss all of this. So we seize this opportunity to invite you to join us in Zambia. Dr. Lyoko, Mr. Lyoko and team will be welcoming us in Zambia for the third biggest international conference on public health in Africa, which is a forum for African researchers and stakeholders to come together to discuss research and how to move public health for the betterment of Africa, so that by 2063 we can achieve the Africa that we want. On this note, I'd like to thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elvis, for the informative presentation and also for the kind invite to the third International Public Health Conference. The next presentation will be delivered by Ms. Becky Nailty, and she is going to cover the latest guidelines for good clinical practice, the R3, as well as the WHO new draft guidelines. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think I'm the last speaker standing on the podium today. I just want to thank the team for inviting me and the team from South Africa, South African Clinical Research Association, to be part of this meeting. It's actually an honor because in most cases, you know, as it's already mentioned, you find Egypt and South Africa leading in the number of clinical trials that are being conducted in the continent. So it's really great for us to meet together and share best practices. Okay. So I'll be sharing on the latest resolution guidelines on ICH GCP, the revision number 3, and the WHO draft guidance for best practices for clinical trials. Okay, as I've already been introduced, I represent SACRA. SACRA is the South African Clinical Research Association. It's an association that has been founded by members of the industry in South Africa, which is positions South Africa at the forefront of clinical trials. We are an industry community association founded by industry stakeholders. Our aim is to lead and serve as the conduit to improve efficiency of clinical trials conduct in South Africa. I would like to share this update. I think if in this house we have people that are working in the clinical trials field, they will understand that the ICH GCP guidelines are the standard for conduct of clinical trials, and each and every country, as far as I'm aware, in Africa does follow the ICH GCP. As much as we do have our local regulations and our local adaptation to ICH, we still follow the standards. And we know since 2016, which was the year of the finalization of ICH R2, the GCP guidelines, the clinical research field that phased advances in technology that came along with rising complexity of clinical trials And then the International Council of Harmonization Expert Working Group was created to address the growing gaps between the existing regulations and the real-world processes. So in my slide, I do highlight the timing for the first GCP guidelines, and we know the ER2, the revision 2 was finalized in 2016, and currently the current one, which is under draft, is R3, which focuses on modernization, harmonization, and adaptation of the current acceptable best practices. What it actually it still includes the components of R1 and R2, but refining specific areas, and I will be focusing on those specific areas that have been refined. These are some of the highlights of the changes. Obviously, the changes include a new structure to provide clarity and better readability. It adds the language to facilitate innovation in clinical trial design, technology, and operational approach. It encourages a fit-for-purpose approach, transparency by clinical trial registration and result reporting. It provides additional language to enhance the informed consent process, and it also considers practical and feasible responsibilities of the sponsors, investigator, and digital ecosystems. What are the key changes in those guidelines, and what is important? It's still under draft, and it's still under a revision. In instance, the E3 aims to establish a unified GCP framework, aligning sponsors, IRBs, investigators, and regulators from trial inception, data analysis for all interventional clinical trials. So what they have put together, they have changed the structure currently where it starts with the IRB section, giving the highlights on the responsibility of the IRB and focusing more on what is required for the participant-informed consent and focusing on other medias of collecting informed consent. In the past, prior to the pandemic, there were a lot of engagement in implementation of electronic informed consent, but now in the ICH, they are giving more practical approaches and more examples of the different approaches that can be used for the implementation of the informed consent. It also further highlights the important need of compensating participants when it comes to clinical trials, and highlighting that actually compensating participant, it's not necessarily an undue inducement. It also elaborates the responsibility of the investigators with a focus on digitalization and the processes that can be implemented at the research site in relation to collecting data from digital platforms. Furthermore, what was interesting is the need for delegation of responsibilities to service providers. And what I saw that was also very important there was that it will further allow the investigators to delegate other responsibilities which are part of routine clinical care, and also highlights that in other clinical trials, it may be necessary to have people that are involved in the studies, but they're not necessarily part of the investigation team, but they are more part of the routine care. And in the past, actually, what we have seen was that everyone that needed to be part of a clinical trial, they needed to be part of the investigators team, and they needed to follow all the standards. Furthermore, it highlights the responsibilities of the sponsors and more changes on how the sponsors can implement digital systems to improve the quality management systems of the conduct of the clinical trials. It also gives more alternatives on approaches for drug accountability and also alternatives to replace investigators' brochure where it is necessary. The new section that has been added is the data governance section. The data governance section is a complete new section which introduces crucial guidelines for both sponsors and investigators, focusing in the increase of and the use of computerized system in clinical trials. I see they're already highlighting the time is up. And then the next guideline is the WHO draft guidance for best practices for clinical trials. This guidance document has been published and it was under consultation, and consultation process has basically closed. What is more important with this guideline is that it best aligns with what has been shared just now, and with the focus on section C, which I think it is more relevant for the African continent. It addresses the challenges of gathering evidence from underrepresented subpopulation. And we know that Africa is underrepresented when it comes to the number of clinical trials that are being conducted in Africa. So with the WHO guidance and the current processes of implementing those guidance, we hope that it will improve the number of clinical clinical trials that can be conducted in Africa, because at the end of the day, we need to ensure that the people that will be using that drug when it's in the market, they actually have an opportunity to go through the testing aspect so that we can ensure generalization of the data. And in that note, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Vicky. That was very informative. So now we open the panel for discussion, and I would like to start from Dr. Rania Ibrahim. I mean that the Egyptian Drug Authority and in Egypt, we have taken some active steps toward attracting the investment of clinical trials. And I understand that the Egyptian Drug Authority was established in the year 2019. So can you advise us what are the actions and the progress made since 2019 until today, and where you aspire tomorrow?
Thank you, Dr. Sahar. Thank you for the informative presentations, and thank you for inviting me for such a great event. First, like Dr. Sahar said, that IDA was established in December 2019. It was scattered 3 entities with different regulatory proficiency. And since then, the IDA taken initiative to make it a great catch-up for the time consumed for the pharmaceutical industry in Egypt by supporting new guidelines in all aspects of regulatory practice. One of them was clinical trials, which was dreaming for a law to enforce and to regulate the emphasized clinical trials in Egypt and to regulate the responsibilities of the different stakeholders. So in December 2020, the issuance of the clinical trials research was issued, and its executive regulation followed in 2022. Since then, IDA have a lot of activities done to cope these guidelines. We have enforced our mission as a regulatory personnel for specialized clinical trials in Egypt as part related to the clinical trial review technically and the IMP insurance quality and efficacy is responsible done by IDA with different stakeholders responsible on other aspects of the study. IDA took the initiative to have different ministerial decrees. Also, we have published 2 versions of our guidelines for clinical trial oversight in Egypt. I'm and my team have a lot of effort to build our capacity to cope the global speed related to clinical trials. Also, we have the challenge to achieve maturity level 3 in vaccine scope. Also, this month we have been already assessed according to WHO GPT for medicine scope for clinical trials, and also the good news that we already have sustainable implemented system in clinical trial oversight in Egypt. Also, we have a plan for the future, as you are asking for the future. We have a plan to integrate the new technology in clinical trial regulation, as the world now is looking for decentralized clinical trials, remote inspection, and also different aspects of reliance in using different approvals by stringent authority. So we are looking forward to improve our process and our proficiency to cope the world and the global market concern in clinical trials, hoping to make an Egypt clinical trial oversight environment as a hub for the world for clinical trials, as my colleagues said that Africa is represented in clinical trials. That's why we took the plan for the future that in case of multinational companies in pharmaceutical industry planning to register their product in Egypt, it will be an initiative to not enforce, but we put a plan to be part of their clinical trials before registration, so to ensure being represented in the data collected for this product before being registered in Egypt. Thank you, and hope to cover all your questions.
Yes, answers the question. Thank you very much. So I will move to Professor Manal, and I would like to. The question is about Masri, which is the clinical research center established at Ain Shams University Faculty of Medicine. And knowing your role in Africa, leading the Society for Liver Disease in Africa, how can we replicate this in Africa and other countries, and how we can establish this as a further collaboration?
Okay, thank you very much first for inviting me to this excellent meeting. I'm really happy to be here today because we started an initiative through the Society of Liver Disease in Africa of strengthening research centers in Africa, particularly relating to liver disease. And just in short, one of the major problems that although we've seen that there are many clinical trials starting to be conducted in Africa in different domains, like the HIV, malaria, tuberculosis, and for many, many years. But they are done by non-African researchers. The PIs are usually non-Africans, and the publications are not in the name of leading African researchers. And that's one of the major problems and questions that we have every year within our meetings and conferences in Africa. For the domain of liver disease and hepatitis in particular, Africa holds one of the highest burdens of disease and the highest burden of new infections. For example, for hepatitis B, more than 67% of the new infections occurring globally are happening in Africa. And for children, we have more than 66% of the infected children with chronic hepatitis B globally are in Africa. Now we're having new medications, new cures, new molecules for hepatitis B. But if you look at the trials that have been conducted in Africa for hepatitis B, example, for prevention of mother-to-child transmission or others, very, very, very few. You can count them on one hand. So I think Africa deserves much better from us, and I think we deserve to work all together as stakeholders to improve the work of institutions, to train physicians, to train researchers, to do capacity building at the human level and at the infrastructure level. For Masri, we started in late 2016. That was an idea actually by our dean. We had an institute within our existing hospital facility that was dedicated for bilharzial or schistosomiasis research. And that it was, schisto was very low prevalence in Egypt, no more research on schisto in Egypt, and we managed to eliminate bilharzia in Egypt. So the building was there, but there was no activity happening inside this building. So we elevated the building, the whole infrastructure from inside and outside, and it became the Faculty of Medicine Ain Shams University Research Institute. The Clinical Research Center is part of it, but we do have the lab, the molecular labs, and now we have next generation sequencers, more than one. And we've actually had sequencing and discovery for the COVID, during the COVID pandemic on the gene bank, new sequences discovered at our center. We do have a cancer biobank. We do have the Clinical Research Center, an Animal House, among others, bioinformatics, among others. The Clinical Research Center started from zero, from nothing. What we've done is that we galvanized the efforts of all the stakeholders, including all the clinical researchers in my university who have conducted clinical trials previously, and we brought them all to bring in their clinical trials inside the CRC. So none of the clinical trials are happening inside the hospitals, but they're all happening inside the CRC currently. We are very well poised inside the hospital facility, so very well coordinating with all the departments, all the facilities. We see more than 2 million patients a year. We have 3,700 beds in my hospital and all departments and subspecialties. So we have coordination with all subspecialties and departments, and that made us to manage from finalizing the infrastructure in 2017, 2018, and getting the accreditation of the Ministry of Health in 2019 to have more than 50 multinational clinical trials and more than 70 investigator-initiated trials and local trials now in our center alone. We are bringing in a lot of projects and international projects and networks from the UK, from the US, and other countries, even from China. And we have currently we are also being the center now for the Abbott Global Pandemic Defense Coalition for Pathogen Discovery. So it's the center started from really zero to being a center that can really help and engage a lot of research centers in Africa and help in networking and international networking and bringing in a lot of experience and a lot of facilities and a lot of lab facilities as well in a very, very short time. We had a lot of support from our university and coordinated very well with the financial resources of our university. We elevated the number of registrations of clinical trials to triple or quadruple the number that was there before we started. And we're helping researchers also to get training on good clinical practice. And we are very well aligned with the EDA now and very well aligned with the new legislation for clinical trials. We have our own SOPs, Standards of Operation Manual, and we would like to collaborate and cooperate very closely with Africa CDC and other networks to start and help Africa in replicating our model. That's something I'm doing also under the umbrella of my society, which is Society of Liver Disease in Africa. We need to help more African researchers. Our conference is bringing every year, it was our 6th year this year in Tanzania a few weeks back, and the quality of research is improving from one year to the other. The young researchers are really, really hungry for information, for help, for support. I think also Africa CDC and Africa Union can help in getting scholars, fellowships for training, and help in training principal investigators that are Africans who can publish their own work. We are partnering with the Lancet Gastrohepatology. I'm on the advisory board, so we have a partner from Lancet Gastrohepatology, and we can bring in more editors and more partners to help in publishing the work of Africa. This is also a key part of what we need to do, because if we conduct research and cannot publish this in the name of Africa, then we wouldn't be doing the right thing. So I think there's a lot that we can do, and we need also to have a registry for Africa, registry for clinical trials for Africa. That's something that we're missing. We're still registering our trials on clinicaltrials.gov. We need to have something for Africa, and that is going to help in networking and bringing in all the research centers together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And on the screen, I would like to welcome Mrs. Rosemary Lulu, who was supposed to be with us physically. However, it looks like the flight, that arrangement did not help with this. I would like to welcome you on the screen, and Mrs. Rosemary actually is a scientist, GMP inspector, and lead quality auditor certified with over 10 years of experience in the pharmaceutical GMP inspection and 23 years in experience with NAFDAC. She's actually an assistant director, drug evaluation and research at the Nigeria Authority. She contributed to several initiatives in terms of development of policies, guidance, documents for good regulatory practice in Nigeria. And she is a resource person in system strengthening programs, capacity building, training, including mentoring of other national regulatory authorities. Documents for good regulatory practice in Nigeria, and she is a resource. She participated in the review of the WHO listed authority guidance document. Welcome on board, Ms. Rosemary. I hope that you can hear me, because I do have a question for you. She participated in the review of the WHO listed authority guidance. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay. So my question to you, Mrs. Rosemary, is how the NAFDAC, the Nigeria Authority, have responded to the COVID-19 pandemic clinical trials? So my question to you,
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me once again?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I actually have an excerpt here to speak on, but let me just go straight to your question. NAFDAC has deployed the Reliance pathway. Yes. NAFDAC has deployed the average Reliance pathway, and NAFDAC has deployed the okay.
Rosemary, switch off the virtual summit that you're watching. Switch it off, and then it will not be realized.
Hello? Hello?
Switch off the virtual summit.
Yes.
Rosemary, switch off the virtual summit that you're watching.
There's a delay, sorry.
And then it will not be realized.
Hello?
Yes, we hear you very well.
Okay. So, first of all, I'm saying that NAFDAC has deployed the Reliance pathway to enable a timely review of the clinical trial processes in Nigeria. Yes, the normal review period for clinical trial and authorization is 60 days, but because NAFDAC has deployed the average review Reliance pathway, the review timeline has reduced to 60 days. And then for emergency periods, it has also reduced to 10 to 15 days, in line with the average review timeline.
Secondly, NAFDAC has also developed guidelines. The ABAYA Joint Review Assessment Guidelines have been reviewed and it's available on the website. These guidelines are followed to do a reliance review timeline in order to make available drugs in a timely manner to help patients have their drugs available, and these drugs still remain of the right quality and they are safe and are efficacious to the patient. Another route that NAFDAC has taken is the consideration to the review of application for clinical trial of non-routine process. They are safe and efficacious to the patient.
Okay, thank you very much. We are going to move ahead with the
It's available and has been implemented during the COVID-19 pandemic. So that is one of the ways that NAFDAC has been able to deploy this process to enable the access to medicines during the COVID-19 as required. And this medicine still remain of the right quality, safe, and efficacious.
Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Rosemary. We still hope that you will make it to Cairo, and we will see you on the second and third day of the event. Cutting timelines short is an objective and is cited among one of the barriers for the start of clinical trials. And the next question that I would like to address is to Dr. Elvis. In your opinion, what are the things preventing the Africa harmonization from the theory stage to the practical implementation?
I think one of the first things that we have to acknowledge in Africa is that different countries are not at the same level of capacity. And most of the time, the need for clinical trials do not only happen in areas where there is capacity. So what we're trying to do now is to make sure that we permit member states to talk among each other, to share their experience, to do, let me say, benchmark visits to learn from from the good practices, just like Prof was suggesting that the research center could serve as an area where people can learn, then to train people to also do clinical trials. So the whole idea is, how do we get member states to talk to each other, identify their strengths, and then leverage these strengths in periods of need? So one other thing, and I would give an example with respect to, say, ethical clearance for research. When we look at what happens during emergencies, is that at times the ethics committees don't have the capacity to respond to some of the requirements from the clinical trials. And this may be in situations where maybe there's little information about what is causing the emergency. Even some of the medications or some of the interventions that need to be tested in clinical trials, there is no prior information. So this, at times the lack of capacity make people to refrain because they don't know where the level of their responsibility ends with very limited information. So currently we are working on, within the ethics space, on developing an Africa-centered research ethics framework which respects African values and also take into consideration the fact that people who participate in research actually understand why research is being done, to avoid a situation where people feel that they are just a means to an end and not actually participating because it has something to do with them. So within this framework, one of the things that we're trying to encourage is is it's true that the values cannot be universal in the whole continent, but we identify some key values that can transcend through different cultures and through different communities, that if presented to people, or if seen as a proxy by other people for those who don't have the capacity, it could still be accepted. And within this framework, we're trying to develop some minimum requirements that needs to be reached for there to be some sort of an acceptable level for this to be done. And the next level is to create an oversight group, such that if there is a problem that we need to address, which is affecting numerous countries, one country's lack of capacity shouldn't slow the process of the clinical trial, but there should be an oversight group that can give a go-ahead and say, at this level, this is acceptable to be done as a trial. This doesn't exclude the fact that the different member states have the right to give their clearance, but it gives them some assurance that somebody has looked at it from the same lens and is serving as a backup. That is for ethics. Then from other regulations, like for pharmaceutical products, I think the fact that discussions like what we're having here in the Aftrisummit and the development of continental bodies that are there to regulate medicinal products can also serve like a first step where this evaluation is done. Some assurance is given to the countries to say it has gone through a certain level of minimum acceptance, and then you can take it from here. But the lack of capacity shouldn't deter you from being part of that. So it goes from the country level up to that oversight, and then the oversight can also serve as a support to the countries that don't have capacity. Because as I mentioned earlier, capacity is really an issue. Thank you.
And do you think that the WHO would be the coordinating party in Africa?
Well, I would say that when we look at the current mandate of Africa CDC, it's supposed to be the institution that is responsible for the health security. That doesn't mean that we're going to be working alone. We have to lead that initiative, but we work with other partners who've got experience in that space to see how we can leverage this, but we have to take the lead.
Well, thank you very much. I will take a question. I mean that I was inspired by the answer of Mrs. Rosemary virtually when she said that during the COVID-19 they were able to cut the timelines short from 60 to 10 days. So the question that I would like to address to Ms. Biki now is, what is preventing the fast review of clinical trials in the normal days? Any lessons that you would like to highlight taken from the COVID-19 pandemic?
Thank you for the question. First of all, the pandemic introduced a change, not necessarily just for clinical trials only. The state of working was not normal. So I think as much as we do and have learned that we are capable, the processes that were applied were under pressure, if I may say that. And the question is it sustainable? Everyone had to put on red cap and step in and do everything possible, but it was not normal. So I do not think there's lots of lessons from the pandemic, but I do not think we can continue to work in a pandemic mode. It was the time for pandemic and everybody had to act to ensure that the health needs of the country, of the world, it's secured. However, what did we learn from the pandemic when it comes to strengthening regulatory review timelines? We've learned that we don't have to rely on just normal meetings where people have to meet every second month or so. We can have different ways of review. We've learned that reviews can be done virtually, and most of the regulatory authorities are continuing with online review to shorten the timelines. And additionally, with the pandemic, most of the clinical trials were on hold. So the focus was primarily on the clinical trials that were pandemic related. And what we've seen after the pandemic and the need of diversifying the data, there's an increase in the number of trials that are also coming into the country, which means we need more resources to actually evaluate those clinical trials. So the timelines are comparable. I think they are competitive. Most of the African countries, they do state that it takes about 60 to 90 days to review clinical trials in Africa. However, there are other issues like he has highlighted. I don't think the biggest challenge is actually the regulator when it comes to timelines of the clinical trials. I think it's other aspects more than the regulatory review. I think the regulatory review processes is well established in many African countries, but the biggest challenge may be the other stuff, including the IRB, which is the institutional review requirements, and also other requirements that are needed in order to start up a clinical trials, like your export permits and other approvals that are needed at a community level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just would like to have a final word from each and every of the panelists, taking into consideration the slide that is on the screen now. That is the global clinical trial annual spend that is valued at $240 billion US. And the region that constitutes of the Middle East, Turkey, and Africa, we call it MITA, stands at 5% only of this spend. I'm sure that every country, every continent would like to have a better share of clinical trials. And I would like to hear from you about the enablers for this clinical trial attractiveness. And I will start from Professor Manal.
Thank you very much for this very important question. I think it's timelines, regulatory, engagement of key stakeholders, and just mentioning that because as we're engaging the international industry, for example, and these are key stakeholders, we need to engage also the national and the local manufacturers, and that's something that we're not doing yet. And we started something like this with a local manufacturer in collaboration with WHO, and I have a clinical trial on a new pediatric formulation, for example. And we need this because Africa is very specific about its diseases, the neglected diseases, the poverty-related diseases, and some of the diseases that has a high burden that is not important to other international manufacturers. So I think that's something that should be key also for Africa's CDC. And just one final word, congratulations for all the women and the ladies in this room. I think most of the researchers and scientists in Africa are ladies. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sahar, for the question. Actually, like Dr. Manal said, that demutualization of the pharmaceutical industry in the local producers is quite a challenging procedure because it's have a lot of stakeholders related to the pharma regulatory, governmental level, and the investments. And one of the main milestone is the time. We all facing that if we couldn't have a clear pathway and timelines for clinical trial startups and data integrity, will be very challenging for the future to have a local producer of pharmaceutical medicine. And one of the initiative also, we are trying for, like Dr. Alves said, that we have a communication level between different member states under the umbrella of ARCOR for increased capacity building for regulatory authorities in different Africa countries related to the vaccine scope. We are now under preparation of the next 3-year training plan in different aspects of regulatory practice of vaccine regulations, and hope and clinical trials is part of this plan, and hope after these 3 years that Africa continent is having the proficiency and competency staff to be able to oversight and initiate clinical trials with different phases. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the first enabler that I will think of is local investment, our African government investment into clinical trials. If we were to look at the sponsors of clinical trials, more than 80% of clinical trials are sponsored by international market. So how do we get our government to invest in clinical trials? And we have infrastructure, we have expertise, and we have experience, and we have worked in the most challenging times, being able to conduct research in Ebola. I think that expertise is beyond reach, if you can think about it. So I would say in Africa, we do have the infrastructure, we have the expertise, and we have the experience. But the biggest challenge is how do we create visibility? How do we build the trust? How do we advocate for trust? One example that I usually give is how do you speak about your country? How do we speak about ourselves when we're out there? In many cases, we find ourselves speaking negatively about ourselves while we have a lot to give. I think if we can start changing our mindset and how we communicate about who we are and what we are able to do. And the most important thing for me, it's that when we talk about clinical trial participants, we sometimes forget who is the patient. And if we can all think that we are the patient, and in future, or even currently, we all need those drugs, and we need those drugs to work for us. So we will do everything possible to ensure that there is an increase in the demographics of the people that are participating in clinical trials.
Thank you.
Yeah, when you presented this data, it reminded me of the 90-10 rule, where 90% of the investments in research address only 10% of the problems that cause the highest burden of disease. I missed a heartbeat by seeing this, that we've gone from 90-10 to 95-5. And I think that one of the enablers here is that we should use an inclusive stakeholder approach, where it's not only he who pays the piper that determines the tune, but we should use a people-centered approach whereby we consider the fact that within the space of equity, we should address the problems that cause the highest disabilities and the highest burden, such that even if the people who are interested to fund research have their interest driven in specific areas, they should create that space to listen to stakeholders who may say, even though currently you're interested in funding HIV, we have other neglected diseases like, let me say, tuberculosis, which is mycetoma, which is causing a lot of disability and mobility on the continent. And that's one of the reasons why we are insisting on research prioritization, which is centered around the end user of the interventions for which we do research. Because if we use that approach, some of the problems which do not necessarily appear within the global space as priorities, but if we focus on the context, using Africa as a unit, and then using the different regions and the countries of Africa as subunits to define the priorities, then we can encourage research. Because I would say, when you speak to the communities, as she said, We have a tendency of thinking that we are out of the community, but we are part of this community. When you speak to the community, where the priorities of those who are doing or funding research are, may not necessarily be where the priorities of the communities are. So we should include them in these discussions such that they should feel that the problems they consider priorities are being addressed, and that is how they can also be willing to participate in research that addresses other problems. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the panelists for the fruitful discussion, which I really enjoyed it. And I would like to thank the audience for their attentive listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This concludes our very, very long day for sessions. I'm now inviting you over to do the roundtables with the authorities, your opportunity to directly discuss interesting questions you have with the authorities. The roundtables will happen literally around the table. We have the APPN roundtable way in the front. We have, if you're sitting on a round table, please put your hand up. We have EDA over here. So Mariam, Majid, if you're still here, your front table is over here in the front. We've got MCAS on their table with Dr. Higazi. Mr. Richard, you can go to Dr. Higazi, put your hand up. That's Zimbabwe's over there. Okay. Zambia, you're at the end, at the back. Ray, where are you, Ray? So Ray has taken you to the end, to the right. Okay. Botswana, can somebody put their hand up for Burma? Dr. Hove already, she knows where it is. Is anybody unclear which country they want to go to? Silverani. We will have 20 to 30 minutes for the round table, so make it count. We are meeting in the lobby for the 9 crews for speakers and moderators and sponsors in the lobby at 8 o'clock, strictly leaving at 8:20. Okay.